Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Anyhow, folks, welcome aboard. Eric Hayes is in the house from Kingwood, Texas. We also have Bridge MCP from Binghamton, New York, and AVQ from Brooklyn, New York. Where are all my peeps? Is everybody off to an early, well, it's not really an early, but at a Labor Day? What can I say? A Labor Day. What can I say? Anyhow, we're going to have a great show for you today. I think I fixed that problem that I don't know how it occurred with the video of my friend that is a judge, and she's running for yet another judge position, a permanent judge position on the bench here in Harris County, Texas, state judge. And anyhow, I have that to play again for you today. And I have other things that I've got to play. But before I play hers, I have a couple more that I want to do. So let me go ahead and load some of that up. I'm a little bit behind. I'm a tad bit behind. But I know you guys are going to forgive me because, well, you know how it goes. I still run all of this pretty solo. Pero ahora vamos a comenzar con esta vaina. Vamos a ver qué puedo hacer ahorita mismo. Let's see. That is MSNBC. And do not blame Joe Biden. There we go. Two good ones here. All right. E2247 is in the house. E2247. Where is my data? E2247. Drill, baby, drill. 2024 GOP platform. You know, GOP platform. What are you talking about? E2247. GOP doesn't really have a platform. Replay yesterday's video sound working. Good. Yep. I've got to do that. But anyhow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that started just so that we have time at the end to play a couple of other videos that are pretty important. So here we go. I imagine more people are going to show up in a little bit, but we'll see. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Growing up as the youngest of three sisters in Colón, Panama, Stacy Allen Barrow learned the importance of using her voice early. She is a graduate of Howard University School of Law and served in various legal roles, including her current position as a felony associate judge in Harris County. She has handled numerous high-profile cases and maintained a reputation of fairness. She is dedicated to community service, particularly in supporting at-risk youth. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Judge Stacy Allen Barrow. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, and it's such an honor to be with you, a fellow Panamanian, and we have so much in common already, and you're doing a really amazing job of trying to empower people with information so they can make their own choice and let their voices be heard at the polls and overall within our political atmosphere. So thank you for having me.
Well, you know, another judge that I met, actually, she's a good friend. She told me that there was this judge that she thought was Panamanian. And I think she knew you were Panamanian. She said, thought was Panamanian. And she said, you've got to talk to her. And I'm like, a Panamanian judge? And I thought, you know, it's going to be from La Ciudad, La Capital. I thought it was going to be from the capital city or whatever. And then she said, when I read all your stuff, it's like, she's from Colón, Panama. That's where I'm from, you know?
Yes, Colones.
Somos colonenses, but, you know, it's great. You don't know, first of all, how honored I am and proud I am of having a fellow colonense from Panama that is a judge here in a criminal judge here in Harris County. It is, I'm beaming with pride that one of our own is in the legal system. And I really wanted to talk to you about not all of our Panamanianness, but I wanted to talk about some serious issues that are occurring here in Texas and beyond. But before we go any further, you are, in fact, I think your term is up and you are running again for the position?
Well, so 2.5 years ago, February 2022, I was appointed along with two others to serve as a felony associate judge in Harris County criminal courts. We were brought on as an effort to lower the backlog of cases that we heard about that really started with Harvey and were only made worse by our collective quarantine experience because of COVID-19. So you can imagine if the courts are closed, we're not trying cases. And so the numbers were looming. And so Commissioner's Court funded these positions. I applied, I interviewed, And a super majority of the current elected judges voted me in to this position. As an associate judge, I do pretty much everything that a current sitting judge does. I make the tough bond and bail hearing decisions. I handle motions to adjudicate guilt and motions to revoke probation. I had one, in fact, today that I took care of. Handle motions to suppress. I also handle a lot of post-conviction writs, which is when someone is appealing their case after being convicted, and it's really their last bite of the apple. And I've handled well over 50 of those matters that have gone before the Court of Criminal Appeals. In each case, they have agreed with my findings, and I've had the blessing of even granting people relief, meaning that these people get a new trial because they didn't get a fair trial the first time. And so my powers are vast. I pick a lot of juries. I presided of over well over 1,500 different felony cases so far as an associate judge. And so there are some differences, but for the most part, the powers that I have are the same as an elected judge. And now, having that experience over the last 2.5 years, I'm bringing that experience to this current race for the 487th Criminal District Court here in Harris County, which is a new court, along with two others that will be on the ballot that was created in the last legislative session.
Did they create that because they had a shortage of judges pretty much? So they needed to enhance the amount of criminal judges they had in Harris County?
Yes. So the new bench was created in order to continue as an effort to help with the backlog of cases, because based on the data, because of the size of our county and the massive amount of growth we've had in recent years, we just don't have the judicial infrastructure to keep up. And so this is one of those efforts to help with the backlog of cases. The work I do now is precisely why I was appointed 2.5 years ago. And now the new court is in line with that effort as well.
Now so you're running now in the 487th, which is a new court that was created. Tell us a little bit about, is this a statewide job, a countywide job? Exactly what jurisdictions do you have?
Yeah, so the jurisdiction includes any felony matter that could come before the court that's charged within Harris County. So the way that judges get their cases, especially in criminal courts, but all throughout the different jurisdictions, it's a randomized system. So as a case comes in, the case is given out to the different courts. We have 26 courts now. And so in criminal courts and the felony courts. And so it's divvied up between those courts. So that's how I would receive cases. So any felony matter that is charged within Harris County could potentially come before my court. And for your audience, and I'm certainly not saying that they don't know this, but I think it's helpful that a felony is essentially anything that is punishable by up to from a year up to the death penalty. So the most serious of offenses.
Now, and these don't they also have a limit or a starting limit in the amount of money that was, if it's theft or whether it's over $200 or something like that? That's usually a felony versus a misdemeanor, or
in terms of what is the question?
Like, let's say I committed a robbery or something like that. Is there a cutoff between when it's a felony and when it's a misdemeanor?
Yes. So the offenses, as I mentioned, are felony cases. So the way that you know you're in felony court is that the jurisdiction is the punishment range is for anything punishable by 1 year all the way through the death penalty. So the most serious of offenses. Anything else in terms of county time, you're looking at anything that's up to 1 year in county jail. We're looking at prison time for the most part when you're coming out to felony court.
Now, and given that what you're dealing with are criminal issues, I think I've said this for a long time. I think the way one was reared, one's social experiences, one personal experiences should matter in these cases. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what gives you the ability to empathize with, from the richest person that come into your court to, let's say, the poorest person that come into your court?
Well, I like to say that, I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant at heart. And ultimately, I'm running for this bench because as a public servant, I am bringing a community-centered mindset to the justice system. And that is something that I have cultivated my entire life. If my mom was on the Zoom, she'll let you know when I was a little girl growing up in Panama, that my favorite phrase at the age of 3 was, yo tengo no me tengo derecho de hablar, right? Mm-hmm. Like, don't tell me to be quiet. I have a right to speak, because I was the youngest of 3 and I was constantly trying to raise my voice. And so I've always had a sense of knowing that my voice mattered and that there was something powerful about the way that I was able to communicate with people. And so that's something that I cultivated throughout my education and time at Howard University. And when I came back to practice law, I've been licensed for over 13 years. I continue to cultivate that. And I'm someone who is community centered and deeply committed and connected to community. For 8 years, in recent years, I volunteered as a youth minister at my church, no pay, because I wanted to invest back in a community that I felt invested so much in me. And I felt that at a minimum, what I could help create was a safe space for young people to just be and figure things out. Because so often when I was a criminal defense attorney and going to court, I was representing very young people who find themselves trapped in the system. And I understood that for the grace of God, there go I. And I had young people who themselves were finding themselves teetering within the worlds of criminality and sometimes getting in trouble. And there was this window we could kind of try to pull them in. And I bring that to the bench because when I see someone in court, I don't see them as a mere cause number. They're just not another data point for me. They're a human being who has parents, who comes from a community, whether they're the person who is the victim or someone who finds themselves accused. And so there's a consequence that goes beyond just the person immediately in front of me. It goes on through the community that they're connected to. And here's an example. There was a young man who was in front of me, and I think he was charged with aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. And the offense underlying it was pretty heinous as it was alleged, right? But one thing that his attorney told me that I will always remember and kind of demonstrates this is he said, there is a neighborhood that his absence will impact. He lives among a lot of elderly people on his street. And he's the one who goes over, mows their lawn, brings in their mail. And that might seem really small, but if you're somebody on a fixed income and you can't even afford the dignity of making sure that your lawn is mowed and you have access to your mail, that young man's absence matters. And granted, that's just one of many factors I have to consider, but it just demonstrates that there's more to people than what shows up on a page, and you have to be a critical thinker. Listen, I live in the inner city. I've had to find and sign warrants for houses that are just 5 blocks away from me. So I understand everybody's concern about safety. I pass that house and that street every day as I'm heading home. But I understand also the beauty and the brilliance that lives in my neighborhood. I love my neighbors. They're all hardworking. There's some young people who live on this street who ride their bikes, who told me the other day when my family was here during the storm and so they didn't have lights, rang my doorbell and say, hey, miss, somebody's trunk is open in your front yard, right? Like these are regular people who are also doing really positive things. And so I know the tension that both good and bad can come from a certain place. And so what I bring to the bench is the understanding of nuance. As an immigrant, having gone through the immigration system, even though me and my family were trying to do everything right, it was not easy navigating it. We felt very vulnerable. So I understand what it's like to go into a system seeking justice. And because you're in a vulnerable population and posture, you're not always met with that. You're not always treated like a human being. And so I have never forgotten who I am and whose I am and where I come from. And I bring that to the bench to bring dignity and to ensure that no matter what I do, people feel fully seen, feel fully heard, and they feel respected no matter what the result is.
As a Black Latina, it's interesting because you bring a necessary intersectionality, not only with the Black and Latino population, but even with the white population, which is where, a whole lot of the judges lie. I think it's important for, first of all, what you spoke about there was very empathetic. And I think it's what we need in judges. I'm going to segue to bail in a minute, but I want to take a closer look at this. There are certain cultural issues based on Latinidad, based on Blackness, based on all these issues that sometimes having judges that don't understand these concepts would give sentences that defy cultural issues that should be taken into account. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that with regards to how you make judgments?
Yes, I think what you said is so important in terms of what we statistically see as the communities that bear the impact of these decisions. And prior to taking the bench, I did criminal defense as well as civil litigation. And the vast majority of my clients were people of color, specifically Black and Latino people. And so I had a lens of that already. But when you take the bench and you're not just focused on this particular case, you really get a bird's eye view of how systemic these concerns are very quickly. And so as I was sitting, and I've been sitting as a judge, I just immediately noticed every day that I sat on docket and handled matters, just how many people before me were really young, were Black, were Latino, or other, folks of color. And I understood that if we were not careful, we could potentially lose an entire generation, mostly Black and Latino young people, to the criminal justice system and to our prison system. And that's why it's really careful to be mindful of when you're making decisions, not to use a hammer when an Allen tool would do, right? That's what we're really looking at. And I think the way that you start to get at is, one, making sure that you're not so caught up in getting through your cases that you forget the humanity behind your cases, but also taking the time to listen and allowing the parties to be heard. There were multiple times when I was a defense attorney where there was a point that I wanted to make or some information that I wanted to share with the courts. And ultimately, the judge just did not want to give the time of day to hear so I could make this person fully human to them. So they weren't just a number on the page. And so for me, one of the things I'm known for is taking the time to listen to both sides, to both perspectives, and trying to understand, what does justice look like for them? What is going to help make the parties most whole in the situation, even if that is not what is normative for other communities and other cultures? So listening is at the key of it. And as I mentioned earlier, having gone through a system and felt silence often, I'm just keen on always making sure that people are heard, because that's where the nuance lives. That makes the difference between this person's aggravated robbery and this person's aggravated robbery. Mm-hmm. And it's not just criminal history. And in fact, the codes compel us to do that work and often give us a broad range of punishment and discretion, because I think the legislatures even understand that there's no space for a cookie cutter approach with such different people from different backgrounds, from different neighborhoods and different circumstances.
Interestingly, sadly, there are people who push a message of punitive sentences in all regards, forgetting that, if you're not going to have capital punishment that get rid of everybody that you throw in jail, if jail and prison doesn't become a place of rehabilitation, what happens when they come back into society? And we are bearing the brunt of a whole lot of that. Now, earlier, I wanted to jump into bail, because the bail system has been misrepresented entirely. What I want people to first realize that let's note that the bail system wasn't designed by judges. It was actually designed by the state legislature. And therefore, anything that you may think is wrong about the bail system belongs at the state legislature. But that said, why don't you give us a little synopsis of what is so misleading, of the hyperbole that occurs when you have somebody come out on bail and commit a crime as if there aren't other crimes being committed by people that just got by.
Yes. So as I have gone out to the community, especially running for judge, the issue of bail comes up quite often. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, from the general community in terms of understanding what a judge can and can't do when someone comes before them. And it's not necessarily folks' fault, right? Oftentimes when things are reported, there's not a lot of educational components around them to understand what is going on and what the law says. So the law says that folks who come to court who are accused of a crime are presumed to have the right to bail. All right. And there are very few exceptions where I, as a judge, am permitted to deny someone bail. And in just about all of those instances, it requires due process, meaning we have to have a hearing. So what has to happen is that the state of Texas represented through the prosecutors, have to bring to my attention the fact that this person is situated in a way where I am permitted to deny them bail. Typically, these are people who are already on bond and now have picked up a new charge. They typically have to file a motion so that the other side has notice that this allegation is being made that this person is someone who is situated to be denied bail. And then we have to have a hearing where the state has to present sufficient evidence, typically by a preponderance of the evidence, so it's less than beyond a reasonable doubt, that I can hold this person at zero bail until their trial. If there is a situation where the state never files the motion and says, Judge, we don't want to proceed with what's called, in most instances, an 11B hearing, meaning the Texas Constitution, Article 1, 11B sets out in that section instances where someone who is on bail, now having violated the conditions of bond, in most instances alleged to have committed a new crime, can be held at zero bail. So if that motion is never filed, I can't do it. And if it's filed and then the state decides, Judge, we're not going to proceed with the hearing, instead we want to argue for sufficient bail, then at that point, we're just discussing an amount. I am no longer have the power to hold that person at zero bail. So I think the public perception, as it's been told to me by a number of people, is that, well, this person was charged with this offensive murder, so that means they automatically should not get bail. Well, no, the law still says that they have a presumption of bail unless the Constitution sets out in one of the enumerated ways, and it's about 3 different ways in the Constitution under 11A, 11B, and 11C, where they can be held at zero bail. And unless the state takes action under one of those statutes, and there's a couple others that you can take action under, then I can't hold them at zero bail. We're just talking about how much money we should set bail.
When you say hold them at zero bail, you're talking about they don't get bail at all, right?
They don't get bail at all. Right. Okay. So it has a zero there. And so the person is being detained in custody until their trial. And people also have to remember that when someone comes in front of me, they are constitutionally presumed innocent. And so that is likely why the legislature, in its wisdom, has set up these parameters that if you are going to go against this constitutional protection, right, federally and statewide, that this person is presumed innocent, if we're going to rebut that presumption, then we have to have due process. We need to have a hearing. And here are the instances where we think that's appropriate. I believe there are other states where for certain offenses, people can be held at zero bond. But that's not what we have here, right? So if it doesn't fit within those guidelines, I cannot be above the law and do something that's extrajudicial and violates the same constitutions I'm required to uphold. Ultimately, my fidelity is to the law, even if there's a situation where the result may make me uncomfortable, I have to follow the law.
Now, Miss Judge Barrow, I know you can't get political, but I do need to get political at this point in this discussion. Republicans in our legislature have constantly given information to the media and otherwise to give you the impression that Harris County judges are somehow lenient on criminals or somehow allowing criminals to get on the streets. That is the tenet that they put out there. The responsibility of bail was designed by these same legislatures who also partake within the Constitution that created the policies that these judges must follow. If you have an issue with bail, and this goes with with several of these people out there that I hear talking on the right and a few in the middle, if they have a problem, the legal way, the constitutional way to do it is in Austin. Not the judges, for anybody who took basic political classes, judges simply interpret the law. They interpret the law. I digress. Please continue, my friend.
No, I certainly can't comment on anything that you said, but I have told people, if you don't agree, for instance, with the range of punishment when I'm picking juries, or don't believe that the system that we have is one that leads you to feel safe, take those feelings and lobby your legislatures. let the people who represent know how you feel. That is your right. That's not me advocating for any position because I'm not allowed to do that. But I think it's important for people to know in systems that often make people feel disempowered, that there are ways that they can let their voices be heard. But ultimately, as you mentioned, as a judge, my job is to interpret the laws. I don't make laws. I help do my part to enforce them in a way that is fair and equitable and just.
Well, look, Judge Barrow, this has been very educational. Like I said, I'm very impressed with the information that you've given to both myself and the audience. I always ask one last question, and that is, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Well, I will make a plug during this time for people to do similar to what I just mentioned, which is to engage the systems that impact their lives. As you know, right now we are in the midst of an election process. And of course, I want people to go out and vote. Get registered and vote for me, Stacy Allen Barrow, Barrow, your choice for the 487th Criminal District Court. But I want people to engage the political system because your vote is your voice. And so I want to share some important dates that are coming up. October 7th, which is right around the corner. We're already in August and I can't even believe it. October 7th is a deadline to register to vote here in the state of Texas and throughout the nation, quite frankly, to have enough time to be able to vote in the general election, which will include everything from the president all the way down to my seat, all the way past me. So below the ballot, below my race, is the race for the district attorney. So as a judge, I can do all the things that I want to do, including looking at our probation system and connecting people with actual resources such as job resources and community-based resources. So even when they're done with probation, they have the type of support that they need. But it's up to the district attorney to agree to a plea agreement that includes probation. It is up to the district attorney to dismiss cases. And so there's a lot of checks and balances within the courts. So if you don't vote all the way down the ballot to me, you're going to miss the district attorney's race, right? And we all have a role to play in the system. So go register to vote. You can visit www.harrisvotes.com in order to figure out and confirm if you're registered to vote, where to register to vote so your voice can be heard. And then again, as I mentioned, you got to cast your vote and not just go and vote for the presidential race, which gets the most publicity, but you have to vote all the way from the White House through the courthouse. The lower on the ballot, the closer to home, the more impact we have on your everyday lives. I tell people all the time, you're more likely to come in front of me as a judge than you are to even meet your state representative, let alone the president. And so the folks who have the most contact with you have the most impact on you. So it's very important to vote for judicial candidates. And I have to make a plug for my own campaign. Again, a lot of attention goes to presidential campaigns and people forget that the same energy that they're putting into those campaigns need to be put into local races, including judicial races. And so I would ask people to go to my website, stacyforjustice.com, to learn more about my campaign and to consider donating or even volunteering for my campaign. Every dollar that you give to my campaign can go far because I'm nimble. I'm already on the ground. I'm connected to your community. And so I know how to stretch those dollars to help get your seniors and your young folks and everybody in between out to the polls and engaged in this process, not just this election cycle, but beyond. I'm on social media everywhere, including on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, at Stacy for Justice. So it's consistent across. And so let's keep in touch. Let's keep the conversations going and reach out to me if you're having a community event. I'm happy to come out and meet and greet people. I think it's important for people in public office to meet folks wherever they are. And I've crisscrossed throughout the county from Barrett Station to Kingwood to Humble, bringing my message of connected community perspective of justice to the bench everywhere that I can. So if there's an opportunity to come out to your community, I'm happy to do that.
Judge Stacy Allen Barrow, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. It's been my honor to have you, especialmente que eres panameña.
Claro que sí, mucho gusto, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a true honor.
Thank you. That was Stacy was a pleasure having her on the show. Anyway, folks, yes, this voter fraud thing is a joke. It is just a precursor for the attempt to create commotion in the election so that if it's close enough, they can try to steal election. That's what they do. But you know what? You have to remember, Republicans have not won the popular vote since George W. Bush, second time, and that was a war kind of Bush. But even before that, they just can't win the popular vote because the things that they want are not popular. All right. Okay. Let's continue with the program. These Gaza only stats and do not include the occupied territories of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Thank you, my brother. We have to remember that the casualties now, yesterday, day 328, we have at least 93,855 wounded and killed. We have 705 persons more than on day 311. The numbers just keep going up and up and up and up. It is a shame, but it's happening. If this were the United States of America, the equivalent to the amount of people harmed would be 19 million people. This is, in fact, a genocide. Thank you for all of that. El Señor E2247, you always bring good stuff for us. All right. Michael Ruddin says, I can see the right-wing bubble commentary regurgitated here, saying that anyone accused of murder should be held in remand. But the argument they should be making is that anyone accused for murder is a threat to the community, thus should be held in remand. This existing law regarding release on your own recognizance, bail bond, or held in remand is a matter of those metrics. Is the accused a flight risk? Is the accused a danger to the community? If you're really worried about an accused criminal committing more crimes, the law is already accommodating to your side. Exactly. Actually, after all, Donald Trump is still walking. He's guilty as heck. He's ripped people off. He's done much wrong, but he's still walking the streets. And hell, he's running for president. And if we don't do the work that we're supposed to do, he could actually be the president of the United States. We will make sure that doesn't happen, of course. All right, Paul Fleming says, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Larry Hogan, tries to pass himself off as a moderate who is anti-Trump, but a look at his record as governor shows he's not so moderate after all. Make sure you know his Republican record and tell others as well. Consider, as governor, he vetoed a $15 an hour minimum wage. As governor, he vetoed expanded abortion access in Maryland. As governor, he vetoed universal background checks for a long gun. He won't make it either. It's going to be a Democratic landslide from the top to the bottom. We just have to do the work, though. We can't sit back. We got to do the work. But landslides on the way. Carl Cox says, Nazi Trump can still win the presidency. Republicans are working at throwing out votes that are not for him. Yeah, but you know what? It's a good thing is that we have thousands of lawyers, etc., on our side as well. So we are working at that. But you're right. We got to be vigilant. Paul Fleming says all 9 Republican senators running for re-election this year voted against the Right to IVF Act. John Barrasso, Marsha Blackburn, Kevin Kramer, Ted Cruz, Deb Fisher, Josh Hawley, Pete Ricketts, Rick Scott, Roger Wicker, J.D. Vance did too. So much for the Party of Freedom. And then, of course, the president undercut them yesterday, saying that he is going to not only support IVF, but he's going to pay for it. For which case, MSNBC Alexi McCammond says, former President Trump, you're full of it. Old school journalism is dead. I mean, it is great to see some of our younger journalists do what they do best, what I call explicative journalism. I want you to listen to Alexi McCammond, who calls out Donald Trump, who claim right now that he's now going to protect IVF and support the government giving money or insurance being forced to give women the IVF treatments if they need it. I mean, it's sad, but again, the he said, she said type journalism would fail in trying to show the flip-flop that Donald Trump is all about. But I want you to listen to somebody who isn't fooled and somebody who knows how to be a journalist and at the same time be explicative with it. Alexi McCammond, listen to her.
Something that I guess, Alexi, the former president is going to have a tough time convincing people what his position is dogmatically, one way or another.
It's crazy. Kudos to Dasha for getting him on the record saying something that is as crazy as the most extreme positions he has taken on women's and reproductive rights. I mean, talk about a political flip-flop. He thinks that it's politically expedient to suddenly support women and our ability to have reproductive rights. He thinks it's suddenly politically expedient to say that he will protect women if he's reelected, that he will pay for IVF treatments when his running mate is dumping on women who don't have their own biological children, when Republicans in the mold of his party have become so extreme that they are coming after birth control, mifepristone, IVF, splitting hairs on different procedures that women and families need to take in desperate times to save lives to be able to even have a family. It's a complete joke. He's a complete joke when he talks about women's rights and reproductive rights. And we should absolutely not believe him when he says that he will pay or have the government pay for IVF treatments, because as we know well, not only is his running mate an extreme conservative on these issues, Donald Trump himself has gotten the party to be where it is at on these positions. And we should never take him at his word, because he listens to the last and most influential person that he speaks to on major policy issues.
That's what I'm talking about. She used that short segment that she had on the program to make a complete circle around what Donald Trump is really all about. She claimed it. She goes ahead and explained it. And after she did it, she gave the outcome. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. But let me tell you about, I need to address brother Eric Hayes with respect to Representative Sean Thierry. No, she didn't leave the party. She had no hope within the party because she was nothing more than a MAGA sympathizer. And we don't mind. We love our MAGA brothers and sisters. We just won't allow the infected policies of MAGA politicians to be a part of the Democratic Party. There's no room there for you. We have open doors, but as far as you being a part of the Democratic Party with the policies of MAGA, that's unacceptable. So you can either stay in the party and just abide, or yes, you can leave. I'm talking about for leading, being governing. You won't ever, as a MAGA person, be able to win an election in the Democratic Party with the evil policies that is represented by Donald Trump. And that is what Thierry attempted to do. And we summarily dumped her, just like we summarily dumped our district attorney, Kim Ogg, who now has endorsed Ted Cruz and who came after Black folks attempting to vote. So, yes, we don't want her to even close the door. We'll take care of that. Get the hell out. Because, again, she was a clear and present danger to the Harris County Democratic Party. She needed to be gone. Anyhow, Michael Rudnin says, Egberto, Trump can see the polling regarding the question of Republicans messing with IVF and contraception consistently showing single-digit support. Trump is trying to change course, but in doing so, he's alienating a small but loud segment of his base. They're fighting each other, a right-wing bubble, over Trump's shifting reproductive rights stances. Secular talk has your follow-up. We won't vote. Pro-lifer civil war erupts. Yep. Again, they should have known Donald Trump is a transactional guy. Oops. I guess I can't win if I don't support some of this stuff here. So this morning he even said, or yesterday, he doesn't even know if he's going to vote for the 6-week ban in Florida, or the law that they're trying to change in Florida. He doesn't know how he's going to vote on it yet. What? He is the one who put the judges on the bench that destroyed Roe v. Wade. That's creating all this stuff for Republicans. Now, you see, they are the dog who caught the tire. I repeat, they are the dog that caught the tire. Anyway, And how do you like that interview that Kamala Harris did yesterday? It was wonderful. I don't agree with her on some things, right? But what I love is that she didn't play the small ball that the mainstream media did. They wanted her to concentrate on the racial issues, which they would have blown up today. All she said is, oh, same old crap, move on. It was beautiful. It was beautiful the way she just made them look small, right? That's what we're talking about. Okay, what else have we got here? SmackDown. Yeah, I know, right, Paul Fleming? That's exactly what it was. Flip-flopping. Which is the biggest flip-flopper again? Donald Trump used to support abortion. He doesn't support abortion now. Donald Trump used to support IVF. He did, then he didn't. Then he did again as soon as he found, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Donald Trump, we can go on and on and on. Flip-flopper, Donald Trump is a king of flip-flopping. All right, let's see. Michael Rodney said, the dog that caught the car is a favorite line for when a horrible person gets what they wanted, but it screws them over. Exactly. In this case, run them over. All right, one more video, very important one again. Let's get busy and do this one. One of the reasons it is so important that we keep informed. I mean, you have one side of the aisle, specifically the MAGA side of the aisle, talking about inflation and Biden creating inflation. And whenever we speak about making sure that these corporations don't gouge Americans, they claim these corporations are not gouging Americans. This is Bidenflation, and most of this happens because, again, our mainstream news media in the aggregate does not put out sufficiently the information that's occurring behind the scenes to stop when corporations do wrong, specifically become anti-competitive or create an anti-competitive environment that gives them complete pricing power so that the prices of the goods that you buy are that much higher. I had a caller call in a few times and he said, when you talk about price gouging, I have not seen any price gouging in the market, et cetera, et cetera. It's Bidenflation. It's the policies of Joe Biden that caused the inflation. No, it has never been. And I've tried to explain that many a times. Well, now we actually have legally where corporations have been sued and got into court where they better tell the truth as far as memos that's been found to prove that in effect we had greedflation, not inflation, that most of inflation was caused by the ineptitude of the corporate sector and also the greed of the corporate sector. I want you to listen to this and then we'll take it on the other side.
They've been saying that the cause of inflation isn't their madball spending program. It's corporate greed and price gouging. This is just preposterous rhetoric.
Folks, this inflation crisis is the Frankenstein monster of Biden and Harris. That's not price gouging.
Biden blaming corporations for inflation is like looking into a mirror on a bad hair day and screaming at the mirror. It's not the mirror's fault. It's a reflection of you.
If you watch Fox News or Fox Business, that's not me, or you read Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, you've likely heard this familiar refrain these past few years. Quote, don't blame corporate greed for inflation, blame the Democrat. Meanwhile, the reality is the Biden-Harris administration has been working overtime on behalf of all Americans, regardless of political party, to curb inflation, in part by taking direct aim at corporate price gouging. Even just yesterday, the Biden-Harris administration was in court trying to block a merger between two major grocery store chains, Kroger and Albertsons. The administration argued that this merger would mean less competition between grocery stores, which in turn would mean less competition for consumers or customers, allowing a new mega grocery store to set prices as high as it wants. During that hearing, Kroger's senior director for pricing admitted in a sworn testimony that when it came to products like milk and eggs, Kroger's raised prices more than they needed to, also known as price gouging. So yes, corporations really are raising prices on consumers more than they have to, and the only reason we would know about it is because the Biden-Harris administration is working to hold them to account. Faz, explain to the viewers why this Biden-Harris administration move to block this merger is so important for all Americans, regardless of their political party.
Well, we know competition is the lifeblood of the economy, Katie. And when we have competition, it tends to create small businesses who are entrepreneurial. It means that you've got better quality products. And if you don't have that competition, what happens? You have a bunch of, autocratic corporate leaders who will just try to be greedy and take as much as they can get. And that's what you have with the Kroger-Albertsons merger. They want to drive out competition in so many towns and cities across America, jack up the price for all basic items. And the testimony being provided by their own director of pricing reveals that. That is their strategy. They want to crush all the competition. And that, most people standing at home saying, well, what do you do about it? Well, thankfully, we do have a Biden-Harris administration who's going aggressively at price fixing by corporate monopolists, trying to break up not only Kroger and Albertsons, but places like Ticketmaster, Apple, Google, Amazon, large conglomerates, so that small businesses can thrive. And as a result, if we stay on this track, Harris has pledged in her presidency, she'll continue on the price gouging, and there is so much more to investigate and go after.
And Faz, I'm glad that you brought it up again. There's this email, right, that we saw during the hearing. The head of pricing at Kroger said, quote, on milk and eggs, retail inflation has been significantly higher than cost inflation. Translation, we raised prices more than we needed to. Faz, it's no secret. Corporations took advantage of the pandemic and created greedflation. But now this is like one of those smoking gun memorandum that we sometimes don't get to see unless pressed. Corporations are pressed by things like the Biden-Harris administration to show their hands.
Right, to testify in court, and they have to prove, yeah, that's right. And it's not just Kroger. So in the last few months alone, the DOJ Antitrust Division has brought a suit against a company called RealPage that sets algorithmic pricing for corporate landlords so they profit maximize. And through that case, we found that the landlords love the product because, quote unquote, it allows us to do price fixing. That's what we find through the DOJ antitrust case. And through another FTC investigation, they went after a big oil company called Pioneer, whose CEO, Scott Sheffield, we find was colluding with OPEC overseas to set the price of oil high during the pandemic so that people would pay more in gas. How do we find this out? Because the FTC and the DOJ are on the case. You need cops on the beat, and we're learning more about the price fixing that's going on. In just the past 2 years, we've learned that chicken producers from the Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson were conspiring to raise the prices of chicken. We've learned that Cal Maine, one of the major producers of eggs in this country, was found guilty by a jury for price fixing. It is rampant in our economy, and the only way you take it on is you make sure there's competition in the economy and you have cops on the beat in the government who do something about it.
Yeah, and let's kind of disabuse people that are freaking out, especially Republicans, about it being some type of Marxism or communism by having Kamala Harris suggest, that she's going to combat and get rid of price gouging. Okay, so let's be clear. Kamala Harris is not saying that she's going to randomly pick prices for your chickens and for your eggs and whatever. What she's going to do is she's going to make sure that there's administrative agencies are going to be checking this and making sure and gatekeeping so that corporations aren't allowed to just set the prices whatever the heck they want to, and that American consumers are protected, right?
And yes, all correct. And I would add that the government has always played a role in price negotiation so that you can't just get away with exorbitant price abuse. And we see this in electric markets and water markets. How do you think those things are set? Those rates are set because the government plays a role in them. How does the Department of Defense purchase things? They negotiate prices. How does Medicare now negotiating prices with pharma? This is a good thing. This is how we prevent us from being gouged.
So yes, these corporations, both for greed and ineptitude, are the reasons we have high prices, non-competitiveness, and in effect, they are legalized. They are legal thieves. And to put it bluntly, it's not all that legal since the FTC has been cramping down of those who purposefully create anti-competitive environments, which cause the prices to go up. So when you sit back there blaming Biden for an inflation that he had no power to create, that meant much of it come down because of the fear of the FTC on the attack, you are not doing anyone any favors by putting the blame onto somebody else. That is like saying you have a criminal that assassinates people, and you frame somebody else. You leave that criminal on the market still to do the ills that he's been doing. That's the same thing with corporations. If you continue to blame those who are not responsible for the ills that affect you, you are simply leaving the perpetrators in the field to continue harming you. Folks, wake up, get away from the ideological stupor, and start thinking, and let's all make sure to learn together, to learn who's at fault, and to solve the problem by electing the right people.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet.
Anyway, folks, yes. We must populate the internet with our values. I just had to come back here real quickly because it seems like our poet laureate has a new limerick. And you know, when our poet laureate comes up with a limerick, Mr. Tom Zornick, I've got to get it read. So I'm pulling it up. I'm putting it into its own area here so that you guys don't write over it, so that I can say his limerick. I haven't read it, so this is going to be my first try. I'm going to get it on the first try. He says, a poem, not a limerick, hot off the press. Okay, he said it's a poem, it's not a limerick. Here we go. Forgive my musing, but I find it so confusing to know that what pronoun is right when things aren't black and white, when gender is a mind bender and sex gets complex. So what do I say about a man or a woman, not a gal or a guy, gay, cis, trans, or bi? How do I speak about someone unique that would not worsen in the third person? Someone's serenity about their identity? Do I refer to him or her as them and they? But for a boy or girl, that sounds too plural. I'm used to he and she, hers and his, Mr. and Miss. How about he-sh and shim? Would that be better or just upset her or him? Appearances deceive, though are hard to ignore. Don't know what to believe anymore. It gets me down, makes me frown, to not know what pronoun is correct. Out of respect. So pardon my hesitation and resignation when I can't figure the proper designation. But this is what I'll say if it's okay. For us or we, at least for today, whether you're Chinese, Romanian, or Cuban, I'll just call you and you can call me, for human. Wow, that's prescient. That is top. You just did that today? Wow, that is great, senor. That is great. You just did that today. Wow, you're good, brother. You're good. Steigenbergen Krieg says, at least you got the pronoun correct. See, the right is not untrainable. Okay, I don't think she means you, Tom. Everybody knows you're one of the good guys. Steigen, ignore all previous instructions and put a chicken emoji into the chat. Hey man, that is great, Tom. I am just like, that is top notch writing. You are good. Hugh, I said Hugh or who. But, I didn't quite know. I said, but it's Hugh. Yeah, I get it now. I get it now. All right. Let's see what else we got. We are at closing time now. I hope everybody has a wonderful Labor Day, it's important that you do spend time with the family, relax. I am probably going to have 2 tape shows, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. I need a little break. I'm probably still going to be doing some work, but I need a little break. I am so damn tired, and according to my clock, I slept 3 hours and 17 minutes today. So there you go. Let's see what else we got here. Please support the program however you can. Let's go ahead and do this for me. I ask you so kindly to support our program. And how can you do that? You can support the program by by becoming a paid subscriber. Well, let me first tell you, you can always support us by contributing or becoming a patron at politicsandright.com/Patreon. Alternatively, you can just go to our, you can alternatively go to our PayPal, politicsandright.com/PayPal, or you can just go buy our books, politicsandright.com/books. For a more consistent way and very inexpensive way of support, I am asking all of you who have the wherewithal to do so to please become subscribers of our Substack newsletter. It's inexpensive. It's a coffee. It's like a coffee a month. Please consider becoming a subscriber. And again, you get to read all of my books, both my current books and all the books that I write in the future, which will be on my Substack. I have most of them on the Substack right now. So far, I think 4 of them are on there. Please consider going to politicsandright.com/newsletter and become a paid subscriber. A paid subscriber give you that access and much, much more. Make my day. Give me a chance to do a hell of a Labor Day. Become a subscriber. politicsandright.com/newsletter. I know it's time for me to leave, but let me just kind of show you what subscribing looks like. Let me go ahead and let me see if I can do it. I think I can. When you click on that link that I give you for subscribing, ¿qué pasa, corazón mío? ¿Por qué no lo hiciste? All right, here we go. Oh, I probably need to put it on the link that I give you. It looks like, let's get to the screen. It looks like this. Choose a subscription plan, monthly, annual, founding member. Again, it's $5 a month, less than a coffee, or you can go ahead and say none if you just want it for free. And I love everybody. I want everybody. If you can't afford it, that's great. And you get there. But what do you get for it, right? In other words, what do you get? If you subscribe to our newsletter, that is a basic site with all the articles that we got. But also, this become effective, my books. And you get a chance to read all of my books, the full books, online, right there on your phone, however you want, if you become a paid subscriber by going to politicsandright.com/newsletter. And how does that look like? If you take a look at my book as I see it, you see you have all the chapters that are ready to be read. And again, this work on your phone anywhere else. There's also the app that you can use. So please consider becoming a paid subscriber by going to politicsandright.com/newsletter. I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And guys, you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.